Hey, and welcome to the most thorough and easy to follow grind video where I will teach you how to properly herd manage, stack, and pick your shooting zones to have a very successful grind, stacking diamonds, getting rares, and great ones. We will also be going over how to fix your grind if any issues were to arise. So let's jump right into this.
Why, hello, you giant. Why would I stop? You don't like the dimes? That's 3 today. That's already 3. That is already 3 since I found that zone. This is so sick. This is filthy. Absolutely filthy.
So we'll go over in this order. 1, starting your grind. Then we'll move into 2, finding your drink zones and my opinions on that. 3, picking your shooting zones. And then everything else will be considered cluster zones. And I will go into the couple rules I have with picking shooting zones and what makes them shooting zones. Then we'll move into the stacking or flipping the spawns to those shooting zones you have chosen. And then once all that is said and done, we'll be in the full swing of our grind. So we're ready to start our grind. Get your notepads and pencils out. Do your research. So whether it's follow, moose, red deer, whitetail, or any other species you're going to go after on whatever map, you're going to have multiple different drink zones on every single map. So bust out the Google, enter in the search bar what you need to find out, but do your research. If you are having any troubles, I do go live on YouTube only, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if you need help, and you can probably find me live. But I'm going to run through some main maps with the main antlered species that you will most likely be grinding for. So we'll start off with Layton Lake, and you're going to find moose and whitetail, about 50 drink zones for moose and about 50 drink zones for whitetail. Next will be Hirschfelden. You'll find about 120 drink zones for red deer and about 60 for follow. Next on Medved, you only will get moose on this one, and you'll have about 100 and some drink zones for moose. Parque Fernando will have red deer. You're going to have about 100 and some of those. Yukon Valley, just moose, and you're going to have well over 100 drink zones there for moose. Calantro Collins, you'll find red deer there, about 80 plus drink zones for them. Kiaroa, a fan favorite. You're going to find red deer and follow there, about 60 or so red deer zones and about 35 follow zones. Rancho, you will find whitetail on that map, about 50 drink zones. Mississippi, you will also find whitetail, also 50 drink zones. Revontuli, a grind favorite for whitetail, you'll have about 60 drink zones for whitetail. And if you go for moose on Revontuli, you're going to have about 100. New England Mountains, you will find moose and whitetail, about 120 drink zones for moose, about 80 some for whitetail. And finally, we got Emerald Coast, red deer and follow, 120 for red deer, about 50 for follow. Do not take any of what I just said to 100% certainty. It could definitely be wrong, but those are some rough numbers of what you should find on those maps. But now that we have decided on a map, we've decided on a species, we are ready to jump onto that map and get our grind started. First thing you're going to need to do is find drink zones. So I use a program called GIMP, and what we can do with GIMP is you're going to be able to see that you'll be able to stack layers, color code them to when you find your deer in those drink zones, and you'll be able to rename those layers like I have done here, and that way I know for sure I have found my 60 total drink zones on Revontuli for this grind. Alright, so now we're on the finding the drink zone steps. So when I find drink zones, I live by one major rule, which is I usually never start shooting zones until I have found most of them and seen what is in these zones. You for sure do not want to start shooting zones till you have some shooting zones tented up. And here's a prime example. What I'm showing now is finding a good shooting zone. You want to make sure when you find a shooting zone, that you have 3 males and 1 female. It is 200 to 300 meters away from another drink zone with 3 males and 1 female at the minimum. We can always switch the spawns after when we go to shoot other zones down, but that is the minimum requirement to what you're going to need for a shooting zone. So again, 3 males, 1 female, 200 to 300 meters away from another drink zone with 3 males and 1 female. Once you find 2 of those drink zones, you will set your tent and tri-stand up right in the drink zones. The tents just have to be 250 meters away from the opposing drink zone. Now we got the shooting zones out of the way, we're going to move into the bad zones, or what I like to call cluster zones. They are formerly known as exterior zones. It's terrible terminology. I did not call it that, and it didn't just make me mad either.
You know what really grinds my gears? That everyone calls bad drink zones exterior zones. You know? I mean, okay, we call them cluster zones because terminology is everything these days. You can have a good shooting zone on the exterior of the map, and people think you just can't shoot it. Like, it's forbidden. Can't shoot it. Not allowed. So we're gonna call it cluster zones. Is it perfect? No. But I don't see you coming up with anything. And that, people, is what grinds my gears. Wallingford?
Alright, so now that our St. Peter G has cleared that up, I know that no one is ever going to call it exterior zones, and I swear if you comment exterior zones in the comments, I will lose my tree. So what makes these cluster zones? So we can see here, I come up onto a lake that does not have 2 zones within those specs of 3 males, 1 female, and the more bigger part that you're going to find is you're not going to have the 2 drink zones kitty corner to each other. So those are zones that you're going to want to shoot down, and you will always shoot the big animals out of these zones and never shoot any small animal. The only other thing I would put along with cluster zones is if you're having any trouble seeing the zone from anywhere, like you got trees or the animals are kind of always in trees, don't use those zones. You're going to have enough zones, and if I pull up a map here of Revontuli, these are going to be roughly the lakes you're going to probably find good shooting zones on, and everything else is just kind of thrown to waste. We're going to shoot everything else down and get the bigger deer into these shooting zones, and we will go over stacking and picking our spawns. So if you guys are getting some awesome value out of this video, it'd be awesome if you guys would like and subscribe down below for making content like this. I'm at about 8 hours of editing and we're only at about 7.5 minutes. So like and subscribes really help out the channel, but let's get back to stacking. Alright, so the art of stacking. So this is a fairly simple thing to do. It's pretty hard to explain though, and why most people don't understand how to do it. So what we're going to do, we probably have a bunch of small deer in our shooting zones, and we also probably have a bunch of big deer in our cluster zones. So what we're going to want to do is shoot the big deer out of the cluster zones and shoot the little deer out of the shooting zones. And what will happen is not only are they going to change in size a little bit, but what should happen is they should switch. So I like to keep it around 4 deer out of our shooting zones and 4 big deer out of the exterior zones, and then reset and see where we sit. And hopefully when we respawn those animals, they have done both those actions. We have the little ones switch to one of the bad zones and get a little smaller, and we had the big one switch to the main shooting zones and get a little bigger. So I hope that makes sense, that yeah, the small ones will shrink, the big ones should grow, they should switch, and all that's going to happen in one rotation of your tents. Then you will reset, they should respawn, and you can do it again if they didn't complete the actions. So now we'll say we have finished shooting down all those cluster zones to all the little guys, and the only thing left in our shooting zones is our 2 big main shooter deer. And again, in the cluster zones there is nothing but little deer. all across the map. All your big deer have now been put into your shooting zones. This is when stacking is completed. You should have roughly 8 gold deer. Some of those may be diamonds at this point. We can now go and start shooting only our shooting zones, only the big deer. And what will happen is now the rotation of all those big deer are going to happen within your shooting zones. They're not going to miraculously spawn in an exterior zone. They will stick to respawning in your shooting zones every single time. So how does that work, you may be wondering. So what's going to happen is I say got my 4 big deer in my shooting zones. I shoot all 4. They are now going to rotate, some growing, some shrinking, maybe even this one shrinks right to this small little thing, and these ones grow maybe even to a nice big diamond. But what will never happen is you gave them no reason to spawn elsewhere. So I guess that'll also probably lead me into the troubleshooting the grind portion. So we have shot all our big deer and they've all disappeared. Where did they all go? I can almost 99.999 guarantee that you have not found one drink zone at least. I know this because I have purposely went and only found 59 drink zones when I did this, and look at this, I have 24 deer in one drink zone. All my big shooter deer are here. That's the first thing I would always check when troubleshooting a grind. Make sure you have all your drink zones. The second thing that could possibly screw it up is you have shot a female. If you shoot a female, you will 100% need to go find a drink zone. Uh-oh. There's a dead deer there, and I'm pretty sure I watched both those set of horns walk away. Please tell me I did not just shoot a doe. Like hard shot it too. Oh, we're good. We're good. It had horns. Don't care. Which refers back to the first troubleshooting portion. Make sure you have all your drink zones. Those are almost the only 2 things that could possibly go wrong with your grind. But your grind should be at this point in full swing. You should just be going around shooting your golds, shooting diamonds, and you should be having a really awesome time doing a grind. You'll be getting tons of diamonds, hopefully get a super rare, hopefully get a great one pretty quick. This does take hours to set up, so don't think this is just some quick scheme that you're going to be able to get yourself into. You are in for probably an 8 to 10 hour ordeal setting this up and getting it proper. But if you guys have enjoyed the video and you haven't yet, please like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace. The other guy is probably a troll.